Emperor's New Clothes by Hans Christian Andersen. Many years ago, there was an emperor who was so excessively fond of new clothes that he spent all his money in dress. He did not trouble himself in the least about his soldiers, nor did he care to go either to the theatre or the chase, except for when there was an opportunity to display his new clothes. He had a different suit for each hour of the day, and as of any other king or emperor, one is accustomed to say he is sitting in council. It was always said of him, the emperor is sitting in his wardrobe. Time passed merrily in the large town which was his capital. Strangers arrived every day at the court. One day, two rogues calling themselves weavers made their appearance. They pretended that they knew how to weave stuff of the most beautiful colours and elaborate patterns. The clothes manufactured from which should have the wonderful property of remaining invisible to everyone who was either unfit for the office he held or who was an extraordinarily simple character. These must indeed be splendid clothes, thought the emperor. If I had such a suit, I might at once find out which men in my realm are unfit for their office, and also be able to tell the wise from the foolish. This stuff must be woven for me immediately. And he gave large sums of money to both the weavers in order that they might begin their work immediately. So the two pretend weavers set up two looms and pretended to work very busily, though in reality they did nothing at all. They asked for the most delicate silk and the purest gold thread. They put them both into their own knapsacks and then continued pretending to work at the empty looms until late at night. I should like to know how the weavers are getting on with my cloth, said the emperor to himself. He was rather embarrassed when he remembered that a simpleton or someone who was unfit for his office would be unable to see the manufacture. To be sure, he thought he had nothing to risk in his own person, but yet he would prefer sending someone else to bring him the intelligence about the weavers and their work before he troubled himself in the affair. All the people throughout the city had heard of the wonderful property of the cloth, and they were all anxious to learn how wise or how ignorant their neighbours might prove to be. I will send my faithful old minister to the weavers, said the emperor at last, after thinking about it for some time. He will be best able to see how the cloth looks, because he's a man of sense, and no one can be more suitable for his office than he is. So the faithful old minister went into the hall where the knaves were working with all their might at the empty looms. little bit of thread on those looms, but he didn't express his thoughts aloud. The impostors requested him very courteously to be so good as to come nearer their looms, and then they asked whether the design pleased him and whether the colours were not very beautiful. At the same time, they were pointing at the empty frames. The poor old minister looked and looked, and he couldn't see anything on the looms for a very good reason. There was nothing there. What? He thought. Is it possible that I'm a simpleton? I've never thought of myself as one, and no one must know if I am one. Can it be that I'm unfit for my office? No, that can't be said either. I will never confess that I couldn't see the stuff. Well, Sir Minister, said one of the knaves, still pretending to work, you do not say whether the stuff pleases you. Oh, it's excellent, replied the old minister, looking at the loom through his spectacles. This pattern and the colours. Yes, I will tell the emperor without delay how very beautiful I think they are. We'll be very obliged to you, said the impostors, and then they named the different colours and described the pattern of the pretended stuff. The old minister listened to their words carefully in order that he could retell them to the emperor, and then the knaves asked for more silk and gold, saying that it was necessary to complete what they had begun. However, they put all that was given them into their knapsacks and continued to work with as much diligence as before at their empty looms. The emperor now sent another officer of his court to see how the men were getting on and to see whether the cloth would soon be ready. It was just the same with this gentleman as it was with the minister. He looked at the looms from all sides, but could see nothing at all but the empty frames. Doesn't the stuff look beautiful to you, the same as it did to the Lord Minister? Asked the impostors of the next second ambassador, at the same time making the same gestures as before and talking of the design and the colours which were not there. I'm certainly not stupid, thought the messenger. It must be that I'm not fit for my good, profitable office. That's very odd, but nobody will know anything about it. So accordingly, he praised the stuff he couldn't see and declared that he was delighted with both colours and patterns. Indeed, please your Imperial Majesty, said he to his king when he returned, the cloth which the weavers are preparing is extraordinarily magnificent. The whole city was talking of the splendid cloth which the emperor had ordered to be woven at his own expense. And now came the time when the emperor himself wished to see the costly manufacture while it was still on the loom. So, accompanied by a few of his officers of the court, among whom were the two honest men who had already admired the cloth, he went to the crafty impostors, who as soon as they were aware of the emperor's approach, went to working more diligently than ever, although they still did not pass a single thread Isn't the work absolutely magnificent? Said the two officers of the crown, who had already seen the material. If your Majesty would only be pleased to look at it. What a splendid design! What glorious colours! And at the same time they pointed to the empty frames, for they imagined that everyone else could see the brilliant piece of workmanship. How is this? Said the Emperor to himself. I can see nothing. This is indeed a terrible affair. Am I a simpleton, or am I just unfit to be an emperor? That would be the worst thing that could happen. Oh, the cloth is charming, he said aloud. It has my complete approval. And he smiled most graciously and looked closely at the empty looms, for on no account would he say that he couldn't see what the two officers of his court had been praising so much. All his retinue now strained their eyes, hoping to discover something on the looms, but they could see no more than the others. But they all exclaimed, "Oh, how beautiful!" and advised His Majesty to have some new clothes made from this splendid material for the approaching procession. Magnificent, charming, excellent was all that was heard on all sides, and everyone was uncommonly happy. The Emperor shared in the general satisfaction and prepared the impostors with the ribbon of an order of knighthood to be worn in their buttonholes with the title Gentlemen Weavers. The rogues sat up the whole night before the day of the procession, and had 16 lights burning, so that everyone could see how anxious they were to finish the Emperor's new clothes. They pretended to roll the cloth off the looms, cut the air with their scissors, and they sewed with needles without any thread in them. See, they cried at last, the Emperor's new clothes are ready. And now the Emperor, with all the grandees of his court, came to the weavers, and the rogues raised their arms as if in the act of holding something up and saying, "Here are your Majesty's trousers. Here is the scarf. Here is the mantle. The whole suit is as light as a cobweb. You might even think you had nothing on at all when dressed in it. That, however, is the great benefit of this delicate cloth." "Yes, indeed," said all the courtiers, although not one of them could see anything of this exquisite manufacture. "If your Imperial Majesty would graciously please to take off your clothes, we will fit on the new suit in front of the looking-glass," said the tailors. The Emperor was accordingly undressed, and the rogues pretended to dress him in his new suit. The Emperor turning round from side to side before the looking-glass all the time. "How splendid His Majesty looks in new clothes, and how well they fit," everyone cried out. "What a design! What colours! These are indeed royal robes." "The canopy which was to be borne over His Majesty in the procession is waiting," said the chief master of the ceremonies. "I'm quite ready," answered the Emperor. "Do my new clothes fit well?" he said, turning around and round before the looking-glass in order that he might appear appeared to be examining his handsome suit. The lords of the bedchamber, who were to carry his Majesty's train, felt about on the ground as if they were lifting up the ends of the cloak and pretending to be carrying something, for they would by no means betray anything like being simple or stupid or unfit for their office. So now the Emperor walked under his high canopy in the midst of the procession through the streets of his capital, and all the people standing by and all those at the windows cried out, "Oh, how beautiful are our Emperor's new clothes! What a magnificent train there is to the mantle, and how gracefully the scarf hangs." In short, no one would allow that he could not see these much admired clothes, because in doing so he would have declared himself either stupid, a simpleton, or unfit for his office. Certainly none of the Emperor's various suits had ever made a greater impression like these invisible ones. "But the Emperor has nothing on at all," said a little child. "Listen to the voice of innocence," cried his father, and what the child had said was whispered from one person to another. "But he has nothing on at all," at last cried out all the people. The Emperor was vexed, for he knew the people were right, but he thought the procession must go on now, and the lords of the bedchamber took greater pains than ever to appear to be holding up a train